I research people's happiness, and what I've found across the work is that time plays a critical role. So, for instance, I've looked at what's the effect of merely drawing people's attention to time as opposed to our other lovely resource of money. How does that impact people's levels of happiness? How does age, and more specifically, the amount of time people feel like they have left in life, influence both how people experience happiness as well as the types of experiences that elicit greater happiness? So, for example, the things that I have found is that focusing on time leads to greater happiness than focusing on money. And the way that I explored that was building on prior work, which has tracked how people spend their days and also how people feel over the course of their days, finding that people are happiest when they are connecting with other people. They're least happy when they are doing work or commuting. And so I wanted to see, would thinking about time versus money influence people's tendencies to behave in particularly happy or unhappy ways? And so in one study, I looked in a context in which people both connect with others as well as do work, namely at a cafe. And so what I did was, as people were entering a cafe, asked them to fill out a survey, and on that survey was a sentence unscramble task, which surreptitiously exposed them to time-related words or money-related words. And they were thanked. They went into the cafe, and unbeknownst to them, we observed how they spent their time at the cafe, noting the extent to which they were connecting with other people at the cafe, talking to others, or on the phone, the extent to which they were doing work, so either on their computers or reading books. And as they left the cafe, we conducted another survey asking how happy they felt. And those who were led to think about happiness, or time rather, going into the cafe spent more time connecting and left happier than those who were led to think about money going into the cafe. In the other work, I have found that age influences how people experience happiness. So the way we looked into this initially was looking at how people express feeling happy on their personal blogs. So we looked at millions of blogs. Anytime someone wrote, "I feel" or "I'm feeling happy," we looked at the content of that emotional expression. And what we found was that there's really two forms of happiness that emerged. One that's really tied to feeling excited, and the other that's tied to feeling calm. And based on the blogger's profile information, we could see who it was that was expressing these different types of happiness. So what we found was that people in their teens and 20s were significantly more likely to express excited happiness than calm happiness. People in their 30s were actually equally as likely to express one or the other, and then people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and above were significantly more likely to express feeling calm happiness than excited happiness, suggesting that the way that we feel happy changes over the course of our life. In other work, we were looking at the types of experiences that are associated with greater happiness, finding that, again, actually age has an impact. So comparing the happiness that people extract from extraordinary experiences, those bucket list type events like incredible vacations, life milestones, graduation, getting married, versus ordinary experiences, those mundane, everyday events. And what we found was that amongst younger people, or people who felt like they had a lot of time left in life, it was really those extraordinary experiences that led to greater happiness. But interestingly, as people got older, those ordinary experiences produced greater happiness, such that amongst older participants, they felt as much happiness from ordinary experiences as from extraordinary experiences. Well, I thought it was really interesting that when a 20-year-old says, "I feel happy," and when a 60-year-old says the very same thing, "I feel happy," they're likely feeling very different things. One, excited, an excited feeling, and the other, a greater sense of calm. I also think it's surprising and actually quite nice that these ordinary experiences, those little moments that sort of pop up every day, can produce as much happiness as extraordinary moments. And I think that's really powerful in terms of where people find the happiness in their life. So an interesting implication for consumers, or really anyone who's interested in feeling happy, is to shift attention away from money, which is a resource that tends to absorb most of our attention and our sort of thinking and planning on a daily basis, and shift it to this other sort of, I would argue, fundamentally precious resource of time. And in making that shift, it will remind you and motivate you to behave in ways that are happier and to spend your time in more fulfilling ways. Another implication is to understand that what makes you happy and even the way that you feel happiness will or has changed over the course of your life. So not holding your in evaluating or assessing your level of happiness, not holding yourself to a standard that was either, a concept that you had when you were younger, and allowing yourself to accept and sort of appreciate that it is maybe those quiet moments, those calming moments where you really will find happiness. It doesn't mean that you're boring if you're fired up about, a Friday night on the couch watching TV or movies. That allowing yourself and realizing that that's actually perhaps, if that's what you want to be doing, that is a happy outcome. Yeah, so it has tremendous implications for marketers in two ways. First, you see more and more examples of marketers through their campaigns and sort of branding of trying to really connect with consumers on this fundamental level by promising happiness. And what it suggests is that they should think about first of all, who they're targeting, what demographic are they trying to speak to, older or younger individuals, and relatedly, how should they be communicating that happiness that they're promising? Is it this excitement, these like loud colors, high energy, intense color, or should they be conveying happiness as a more sort of tranquil, serene, calm type of happiness to really connect with and resonate with an older consumer? It also has more implications for marketers who are more and more, there's this trend towards dialing up the experiential aspect of your product or brand. And it's suggesting that, again, they should consider who they're looking to connect with and speak to in order to inform the types of experiences that they are really positioning themselves with respect to. So is it this exciting, extraordinary, those types of experiences, or is it those more everyday, mundane experiences that will really resonate with their target consumer? Well, there is the news story from a couple of weeks ago when 6 Iranians were arrested for posting on YouTube a video of them dancing and to the Pharrell song "Happy," and I think what it does is, first of all, the fact that the Pharrell song "Happy" has become a phenomenon in and of itself suggests that this emotion of happiness is so fundamental and so motivating and so resonant with people. And the fact that there's been such an outpouring of support and care for these young Iranians who were arrested for the act of celebrating and sharing their happiness just goes to show how effective this emotion of happiness is. So what it suggests is that happiness is not a singular thing that people, are pursuing and will someday get there. Instead, And on the other hand, it's actually not purely idiosyncratic and something different to everyone. Instead, there is predictable regularity in how people experience happiness, as well as the experiences that elicit happiness. And there's a systematic shift over the course of people's lives, whereby when people are younger, happiness is more about feeling excited. As people get older, happiness is more about feeling calm. It suggests that we should be shifting our attention away from money and towards time. So there is a lot of attention within the business school of Wharton and research on money and the bottom line, and also within psychology and happiness research that's looking at this relationship of, does money buy happiness? And I would argue, and my research would argue, that that there is a lot of value in shifting attention altogether towards this other resource that is so fundamental to us, and that is time. I'm exploring several different sort of paths, all related to time and happiness. One is, what are happy ways of spending time? We've been looking at whether people should be filling their days with more variety versus less variety. And so far, it suggests that in general, actually, variety is a spice of life. People enjoy greater happiness from more varied activities, but that is not the case when you get to smaller partitions of time, like an hour, and in some cases, even a day, where too much variety makes you feel like you haven't gotten anything completed. In other work, I am looking at, with a doctoral student of mine, we're exploring the impact of giving time on the extent to which people feel connected with other people. So specifically finding that when people give experiential gifts, the gift of time, the recipient feels more connected to their gift giver than receiving a material gift. And finally, I'm doing work looking at whether people would prefer feeling happy over the course of an hour or their life, or whether they would prefer feeling happy looking back on that hour or life. So this preference between experienced versus remembered happiness.